Hello. Uh, I wanted to kind of do a different type, not a different type of video, but talk a little bit about um, desktop environments. And I know, like the previous video, I was talking more about window managers, Neary, particularly, but also Hyperland and a few other Wayland compositors or window managers. And before we get started, I wanted to talk about what I mean when I say window manager, because all of these desktop environments, whether it's GNOME or KDE Plasma or Cosmic, they have a window manager that's built in. It's part of the suite, the desktop environment. Um, for Cosmic, it's Cosmic Compositor. I know, very a very descriptive name, right? Cosmic Compositor. On KDE, they have about the same level of description. It's called KWin. And then you have the wonderfully original name of Mutter for GNOME. But these desktop environments have window managers. So when I talk about window managers, what I'm talking about are the standalone window managers, the window managers that are just a window manager. That's all they are. In X11, the kind of the old X11 days, which is kind of odd to say because when I started with Linux, that's the only display server that we had. The only way of drawing graphical applications was X11, and now we have Wayland, and Wayland's really kind of being a lot more actively developed, and X11 is being a lot less actively developed. But I digress. In Wayland, when you have a window manager, they do a little bit more than the old days with X11, where they were literally just a set of libraries and binaries that just drew and managed windows on the screen. That's all they did. X11 managed the X11 server managed everything else, whether it was your monitors, whether it was your keyboard, your mouse, gaming peripherals, whatever it was, Wacom tablets. That was all managed by X11, and then you would have a window manager whose sole job was to draw the windows, and that's all they did. In the old days, you had very limited effects and things that you could do with the window manager without some sort of third party like compositor, which could draw multiple windows on the screen and kind of layer them and use your graphical accelerator to do some fun effects. But those were separate from the window manager, and as was the display server. But when we go into the X11 days, or sorry, when we go into the Wayland days, Wayland, window manager is a little bit more. They have the compositor already built in as part of that binary. They also tend to manage your monitors, your mice, your gaming peripherals, graphics peripherals, whatever it is, input output devices that you have connected to your computer are all managed by the Wayland compositor. So they're a little bit different, but still kind of the same principle, where it's just what you need to get a graphical applications on your system, to display on your system and to interact with them. And they have their own place, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about when we're talking Wayland and when we're talking about window managers and when we're talking about desktop environments. So why are we talking about this? If I was just talking about Neary like I was just in the last video, why am I suddenly shifting over to desktop environments? Well, to be honest, it's because of Cosmic. So this is a Cosmic desktop. I have a window open, and I'll talk a little bit about why I chose this window. But this is a Cosmic desktop, and what I ended up installing this shortly after the Neary video, just because I had heard that Neary was at least based in part on the Cosmic Compositor. And so I was like, well, let's see, what that's all about, let's just take a look at Cosmic. And this is of course the Cosmic Alpha, their seventh alpha, I believe. I don't think this has switched over to the beta. I don't think that's even out yet. Um, so this is just the alpha of Cosmic, and I was just like, well, it's an alpha, and I'm not going to live in it because it's an alpha. Um, but I want to take a look at it, and so I installed it on the system. And what interested me, and that wasn't surprising at all, but was the fact that I just installed Cosmic. I installed a Cosmic package, and it got me the Cosmic Compositor, and it got me a network management widget, and it got me a Bluetooth management widget, session. All of this, it just kind of came with even a notification um, uh, server. Um, it just kind of came with the Cosmic, you know, environment, because that's what they are. That's what desktop environments do. They kind of already curate all of the software that you need to have a full functioning desktop. In when I was installing Hyperland, I had to find a way to draw a wallpaper on the screen. I had to find my own network management applet. I had to find my own panel. I had to find all of these applications, which at the time I didn't mind doing. And there is some fun in that. There is some fun in finding and curating your own software for your desktop environment. It's unfortunately a little bit more limited now. Um, but there is some fun, and like I went through and I found all these applications, and they're mine. And so this desktop is mine, even though I'm using Hyperland or whatever window manager you're using. The rest of the suite is yours, and you can configure them the way you want to, and you can do whatever you want in there. You learn a lot about how graphical applications and how a desktop is built on Linux, and that's great. That's one good use case for a standalone window manager. Um, but that's not to say that things like Cosmic don't have a place on in Linux. I think back in the day, my whole idea was that when you're new to Linux, you pick a desktop environment. Um, and then as you start getting, well, I'll go even further back. When you're new to Linux, you pick a distribution, and you think that whatever distribution that they're gonna have a flagship desktop and all of this stuff, and so you just pick your distribution, and then you realize that all distributions are basically the same. It's just a different package manager, a different way of packaging libraries or dependencies. And so you say, well, all I need to do is pick a desktop environment. And so you go with GNOME, or you go with KDE, you go with Pantheon, you go with Cosmic, um, and then you have a desktop, desktop that you can work in. And then the idea is, okay, well, the next evolution is to build my own desktop using a standalone window manager, using um, software, widgets and tools and panels and wallpaper managers and things like that, that I pick and that I build and that I configure. And then after that, you've reached the pinnacle. You've reached enlightenment, which is a desktop environment, although that's not what I'm talking about. But you've reached that kind of nirvana. You've gotten to the top, and there's nowhere to go from here. But that's kind of not the right way of thinking about it. It's not an evolutionary process. Um, you don't just go through these things and then you reach the standalone window manager and your own curated desktop, and now you've reached nirvana. That's not how things really work. There's a use case for everything, and that's why even the smartest developers are still developing things like Cosmic or KDE or whatever, because there's a place for them. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Cosmic and why why this kind of changed my perspective. Um, Again, I started using Cosmic just because I wanted to see what it's like, see how where it's coming in, and I have this open to the appearance panel. And this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. That's a little bit different with Cosmic versus something like GNOME. You can actually style your own system fairly easily. The widget theme, the button placement, the button styles, those are going to stay the same no matter what. But you can almost build your own style sheet without having to know anything about CSS, because they have things here. You pick your accent color, which is going to pick, how text is highlighted. It's going to pick certain other, like, I don't know if I can highlight anything in this window, but it's going to pick that, like when you select text and it's highlighted, it's going to choose that. It's going to, again, some of the accents is going to pick that. That's your accent color, but and that's basically all you can do in GNOME. You can just pick your accent color. But here you can also change your application background. You can change the container background. You can change your text. You can change your component tint. So like when you have things like your scroll bars or the backs of the what is it, switches, I guess is what you'd call these. Um, those are picked here, and then of course you can have your accent um, theme or your accent color use uh, in this kind of they call it an active window hint, which is just this border that goes around the active window. So you can pick all of that, and it's fairly easy. If you know RGB, you can just put in the RGB value here. This theme is based off of Cappuccine Macchiato, I believe. So I just looked up their style sheet and I found the colors, and then I could just paste them in here, and I built my own little Cappuccine, theme for Cosmic. Um, uh, Again, the same thing here. So that's something you can do, and then there are you can even change how round things are, the compactness of your interface, all of that. You can change, everything. And then somewhere in here, there was, and they may have removed it, but there was a way of um, picking, saying, hey, I want this to apply to certain GTK apps, and then it would take this style sheet and it would apply this for libadvita and certain GTK3 apps. And that's pretty cool that you can just do that right within the interface. And I like that. I was like, hey, that's cool. I can kind of build my own theme fairly easy without, having to write a style sheet. But that wasn't the only thing that I liked about Cosmic. Um, Cosmic is a floating, the Cosmic Compositor is floating by default, but you can actually turn on tiling, and you can turn this on you can have it default to turned on, or you can have it default turned off, and you can always turn it on and off uh, for your current workspace. Um, so it turns Cosmic into a auto tiler. Um, so if you are used to tiling window managers and you like that, uh, that's something that's already here for you. But you also get that the strengths of a desktop environment, in that everything is curated for you, and configuration, um, like your appearance, for example, is done through graphical tools, and it's done fairly easy. You don't have to necessarily worry about your configs breaking because of a syntax error or whatever it is. So that is what got me back into using a desktop environment, was just the fact that I liked being able to install this and then have all the tools that I need to interact with my system and to have graphical applications. So um, that started getting me thinking about and changing my perspective really about the place that desktop environments have. Um, it's not just for people who are new to Linux. If you want less of a burden on yourself, on your intellectual capabilities or your time, um, and you just want everything to kind of work together seamlessly, then that's what the desktop environment's there for. It's there so that you can already have tools and systems in place, uh, all in one, and everything is configured. Uh, I don't want to say simply, because even if you're in a text document, that's not necessarily difficult, but in a more comfortable way, in a way where it's a little bit more stable. Um, so it's not this like elitists always use a standalone window manager, and so if you're not using a standalone window manager, then you're not a Linux elite. And even if that were true, why do you want to be a Linux elite? You should just want to use your computer the way that you want to use it. And if that means that you are using a desktop environment, then that doesn't make you any less of a proper Linux user. It just makes you somebody who focuses on having a suite of applications that is already pre-curated, that is going to work together seamlessly without issue or with little issue. Again, Cosmic there was in alpha, and so there are things that are missing and not implemented yet, and then there are things that might break because it's an alpha. But I after using Cosmic for a little bit, just kind of getting my feel for it, I also kind of switched again. So this is KDE Plasma 6, and I configured it the way I like things configured. I put in a global menu bar, which I can't do in other um, in other places. Um, but I put in a global menu bar. Um, I just have it as a floating window manager. You can install KWin extensions and scripts that will change it into an auto tiler, or you can even go into there and kind of change it into a scrolling window manager similar to Neri. All of that's available to you, um, but you can also just install it and use it you know right away with all the tools that are available to you, all the tools that you need to have a functioning desktop. So I've again changed my ways of it, changed my thinking, and thinking that um, desktop environments are there for those who want to sit down where I'm at, right? Sit down and just work with a computer without having to worry about whether or not things are going to break, or without having to mess with text files to configure things. And yeah, that's very relevant for the new user, but just because I can do anything, or just because I can do something, doesn't mean you should. So yes, I can sit there and I can configure things, and I can maintain those configurations in a text document or several text documents. I can do that, but just because I can doesn't mean I should. And I've kind of come into that where it's more um, important that I can just sit down and use the computer for fun things or for serious things, for work or for play, and I don't necessarily have to use the computer for a hobby. But that also doesn't take away from those who like their window managers. If you are one of those people who wants to control everything and curate everything and use the computer the way exactly the way that you want to use it, then a standalone window manager is for you. That's what that's what you, I don't want to say that's what you should use, but that's what you could use. You could use a standalone window manager and you can curate everything yourself. um, but if you don't want to curate it all and you don't want to make sure that everything works together and that everything is themed properly, then you can use a pre-made desktop environment like KDE Plasma, or Cosmic or GNOME. Uh, there's also another kind of use case that I wanted to talk about with standalone window managers, which is those who just want a window manager. They don't want a network manager. They don't want a, a Bluetooth applet. They don't want a panel. What's funny is I was thinking about this because of a video talking about the Steam Deck and talking about the Steam Deck. Steam Deck has a desktop mode, and it turns out it's KDE Plasma. But they were saying that, well, the desktop mode in Steam OS is just there as a bonus, so that you can install software that's not part of Steam, that's not on Steam. So you can install other Windows games, or you can install Linux games that aren't in that aren't packaged in Steam, or other applications and utilities. So that it's like, and yeah, you could use that desktop environment, or that desktop mode, I guess, to do like real work on your computer, but that's not really what it's there for. It's just there as a kind of a bonus. And the real meat and potatoes, the real active part of the Steam Deck is that gaming mode. And what's interesting about the gaming mode in the Steam on the Steam Deck is that it's just Steam. There's a micro compositor there, called um, GameScope. I'm just blanking on the name, but that's mostly there to just kind of help with compatibility and kind of help make sure that games scale properly to the display or to the best of their ability. um, so that you don't necessarily have to worry about things booting into the wrong display mode, or whatever it is. That compositor is there to help with the game aspect of it, running and showing the game. But that's not really what's driving the interface. It's really just Steam. So when you go in and you boot up the Steam Deck, and either you're turning it on for the first time, or you're just booting it up, or you log out of the desktop session, it's going to throw you back into what is essentially just Steam Big Picture. Um, I was which I do kind of want to. I have Steam installed on this machine, so I can kind of simulate what this looks like in a little bit, in a little way. Just there we go. You can even hear it. But just like that, there you go. Uh, there's uh, what you would see when you go into Steam Picture mode, or when you go into game mode. That's all you would see, and then um, everything to deal. And I can't demonstrate this because this isn't a Steam Deck, but everything to do with like network management or logging out of the system, or 1 second. I think I'm going to have to. Um, Need to remember what I was saying. Hopefully, I wish I could mark these, but so yeah, you can you I can't demonstrate this, but basically everything, you manage your Bluetooth devices. You manage your network. Everything is managed through just the Steam Big Picture interface. When go into launch a game, you know there it is. It's just this environment. You click on play, and then it launches the GameScope compositor, and then launches the game. Usually with a some with this particular game, especially, it would be with Steam Proton, but it could just be a Linux executable. But yeah, that's all it does. Is it just has this kind of microcompositor, and then you run everything through Steam. So one of the things people were talking about with the Steam Deck was the fact um, that it runs games better than Windows. And it's like, well, that's kind of duh. Of course it would, because Windows has a full graphical stack. That it has to load. It has its own kind of like a compositor. I think they call it Desktop Effects Manager or something like that. But it has its own little thing like that, and it has to load everything. Whereas with the Steam Deck, all they're loading is Steam, and then a microcompositor, and that's it. That's all they load. So if you are in this kind of like appliance mode where you want to just use your computer as, I don't know, a Plex media server, or not Plex media server, but Plex media client, and you want to just use that, you can actually, for that's all you want to do. You say, okay, this machine, maybe you built like a small microcomputer or something like that, and all this machine does is it connects to a Plex media server somewhere on my network, and I just want it to just go in and boot up Plex in like this mode, right? I just want to do that. You can actually set that up with either a very simple, because of Plex HTPC, you probably want to use an X11 window manager. But you can just set up a very simple X11 window manager and just have it just start up Plex HTPC, and so you can just that's the whole thing. And if you are using a built package like from the Arch AUR, this is the flat pack version, by the way. I tend to avoid AUR, and I might talk about that a little bit more. But uh, if it was the built package from AUR, you may even be able to get shut down and log out controls just by hitting escape a couple of times. Here it just says exit, but you could also get ways of managing the computer. So that's something you can do. That's a much easier to do on Linux, if you're just using like a standalone window manager. And of course, your performance will be much higher because that's all you're doing. You're just launching a window manager. Excuse me. So that's all I kind of wanted to talk about with window managers and desktop environments, was the fact that they have a place for every they both have a place in Linux. If you want a good experience, full desktop experience, and you don't want to have to configure everything yourself or maintain a whole curated set of applications, then you can have somebody do that for you by building a desktop environment and using that desktop environment that has been built for you. But if you want to do it all yourself, you can do it all yourself. And if you don't need all of that, you don't need a network manager, you don't need Bluetooth manager, or a removable disk mounter or whatever. You don't have to install all of that. You can just install only what you need to do what you want to do on your computer. Um, so that's I know this video is kind of probably a little bit different than what you were expecting when I ended my video on Neri, because I was going to talk. I said I was going to showcase more window managers, and I do still plan on doing that. I think I will, still talk about and showcase a few other Wayland window managers. But I did mention this whole idea of having like a Plex client appliance. So I'll also probably be showcasing a few X11 window managers, maybe some legacy ones. But before I went into that, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about or window managers and desktop environments, because this isn't an elitist thing where you have to you get to the point where you're using a window manager. That's not really how things work. Despite what some elitists in Linux will tell you, the idea of Linux is that you use the computer the way you want to use the computer. That's the whole philosophy, the freedom behind Linux. And yeah, there are some devs who will try to tell you that you got to use it the way I want you to use it, and there are some elitists that will also say that. But at the end of the day, they're wrong. They're just flat out wrong. The whole point of Linux is that you get to build your system the way you want to build it, and you get to use it the way you want to. And if you don't want to do all that work of configuring a window manager, then that's perfectly fine. Just use a desktop environment. Find one that you like and just use that. Don't worry about what other people think about your choice, because at the end of the day, it's your computer. And you get to use your computer the way you want to use your computer. That's why this is so much different than the Mac ecosystem or the Windows ecosystem, which tell you how you should use your computer, and then try to enforce that. So that's not what Linux is. That's not what it's about. It's about being able to use your computer the way you want to. And if there's a use case for it, even if it's just your use case, then use it that way. And don't let anybody tell you, oh, you should use it a different way, or you should do things differently, because they don't know. They might think that they know everything, but in reality they really don't. And for those of us who are doing that, who are saying, oh, you should do this or you should do that, let's take a step back and realize that at the end of the day, again, it's not about how you use your computer. It's about how you want to use your computer. And it's not about how somebody else uses their computer, how somebody else uses your software. It's just about how you want to support it and how you want to how you want to use your computer. It's all about you. That's the whole point of Linux, I think, is it's yours. It's yours. And I know I do kind of want to talk a little bit about what I mean by Linux, because Linux is, at the end of the day, just a kernel. And so it does power things like Android or Chrome OS. But these are different because they're using the Linux kernel, and then they're building their own thing on top of it, and kind of deciding, again, deciding for you how you should interact with the kernel, how you should interact with the computer. And so they're no different than Mac OS or Windows in that regard. But that doesn't mean that, again, that doesn't mean that there's not a use case for Chrome OS or Android. It just means that when we're talking about Linux, we're not really talking about those two operating systems. We're really talking more about Linux with the GNU utilities, or Linux with our kind of traditional package management systems and things, and traditional distributions like Arch and Manjaro and Debian and that style, because those are the ones that offer the most freedom. So that's all I'm going to talk about for this video. I know this one's probably a little bit longer than the previous one, but I did want to showcase a couple of things for you before going on to some probably shorter videos talking about different window managers and showing them off a little bit. But as for me, I think I'm going to spend most of my time uh, using KDE Plasma again. I have fallen in love with it again. If you've watched my first video, you know that my first experience was with GNOME 2, but shortly thereafter it was KDE 3.5, and I was there for the KDE 4.0 days, and I stopped a little bit after that until doing this exploration with window managers, and then now I'm just back to KDE, and I love it. I do love being able to configure things a bit more easily, and not have to worry about maintaining it as much as as you get it configured, and then the things just work for the most part. So I do still plan on showcasing some window managers as I kind of try to build this secondary use case for this computer where it's just a Plex HTPC client. But that's going to do it for today. I know I'm still getting used to not rambling. Uh, so yes, these videos are probably going to be rambling for a while. I actually had to record this a second time because I was so rambling and went off on so many different tangents that I didn't get to showcase everything that I wanted to. But I hope that you do enjoy these looks at Linux. And I hope you'll enjoy the looks at the different window managers that I plan. And if you do enjoy it, please leave me a like. I'm not monetized here on YouTube. I don't currently have plans to be monetized. So I'm mostly just here for the subs and the likes. So if you really like my video, leave me one of each. But at least leave a comment if you don't like it, and a like if you do. Maybe a comment if you do like it too would be nice. But anyways, that'll do it for today, and have a good rest of your day.